So we're up to Daf Tezayin Amid Beis, 3 lines up from the bottom. The Isal Kedaitach. We had a Mishnah in Talmud, and initially the Gemara wanted to attribute the authorship of that Mishnah to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. The Mishnah states that as far as the Hazah of the Paraduma, and the Torah says V'hiza el nochach pnei ol moed, and we require that the Kohen Gadol, that the Kohen Asorif es Hapara stands on Harazesim, Haramishcha, and he has a vision of the Pesach HaHeichal. And the Mishnah says, no, if he's standing on the Harazesim, he cannot see the Pesach oil of the Heichal unless they lower the Shar Mizrachis. So the Gemara says, why do they have to lower the Shar Mizrachis? And the answer is because we're going according to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov has an extra step of 1 amma going from the Ezras Noshim to the Ezras Kohanim, the Ezras Yisrael, which means that the height of the Heichal is more than 20 amos. It's actually 20 and a half amos. Now, the Shar of the Mizrach was 20 amos, so there's no way that you could stand at the Shar of the Mizrach, even and see through the top, and get a picture, get a vision of the Pesach HaHeichal. Therefore, they had to lower the Shar Mizrachi, and therefore the Mishnah reflects the Shita of Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. It's very important because now we're going to say that Masechet Midos was authored by Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. So the Gemara quotes Rav Ada bar Ava. No, the author of the Mishnah in Midos is Rabbi Yehuda, and the reason why the Kohen Asorif Sapar standing on our Mishnah cannot get a vision of the Pesach HaHeichal is because the Mizbeach is in the middle of the Azara, midway between the north and the south, and therefore there's no way that you could see the Pesach HaHeichal. The view of the Pesach HaHeichal is blocked by the Mizbeach, and that's the Shita of Rabbi Yehuda. So now we're going to say that according to Rav Ada bar Ava, the authorship of Masechta Mishnayos Midos is not Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, but rather Rabbi Yehuda. So the Gemara says, "V'isal kedaitu Midos Rabbi Yehuda." How can you possibly attribute the authorship of Masechta Midos to Rabbi Yehuda? It can't be because Mizbeach Emtza Azor Mimish Kachasla. When the Masechta Midos tells you exactly where the Mizbeach was located, you'll be able to see clearly, if you understand the Mishnayos, that there's no way that the Mizbeach would block the view of the Kohen to see the Pesach HaHeichal, because the Mizbeach, although it was to some extent between the north and the south, but it was towards the south. And it was further enough south to allow for a Kohen who's doing the Hazah and the Paraduma to get a picture of the Pesach HaHeichal. And why? The Gemara says, Haruba to Mizbeach b'daram koi. Most of the Mizbeach was on the south side. It was not equidistant between the north and the south. So, right, keep in mind that if you're going through the Shar Mizrachi on the east, or you're looking through the Shar Mizrachi towards the Heichal, which is on the west, now you have a Mizbeach that goes from north to south, which is blocking your vision. And that's absolutely correct according to Rabbi Yehuda, because Rabbi Yehuda places the Mizbeach right there in the middle of the Azara, midway between south and north. However, you cannot attribute the Mishnah in Midos to Rabbi Yehuda, because the Mishnah in Midos places the Mizbeach not midway between south and north, but towards the south side, allowing for a couple of amos, as we'll soon see, of a vision of the Pesach HaHeichal. And it did not block the vision of the Pesach HaHeichal. Now, let's go through some of these calculations to figure out how we know that the Mishnah and Midos could not work out according to Rabbi Yehuda, and the Mizbeach is not located midway between north and south. So first we know that on the south side, there was a ramp that led up to the Mizbeach. That was called the Kevesh. And there was a kosel, a wall, that surrounded the whole Migdash, but on the right side, the distance between the wall on the Mizrach, on the right, or what we call the east, and the Kevesh was 10 amos. So we have 10 amos from the Kosel HaMizrachi on the Mizrach side to the Kevesh. So that's number one. Now, how wide is the Kevesh? And how wide is the Mizbeach? So we're going to calculate this. The area of both Kevesh and the Mizbeach, if you have a piece of paper, you might want to write this down, is 62 amos, all told. Now, we're going to add the 62 amos to the 10 amos. It's actually, if I want to be more precise, it's 10 and a half amos of the distance between the Kosel on the Mizrach side and the Kevesh. So we got 10 and a half amos, and then we add 62 amos. So it's all told 72 and a half amos. Now, from the Mizrach, just 1 second, let me just calculate this. I'm sorry. What I meant to say is that from the Darom all the way to the Tzafon, left to right, is a total area of 135 amos. Now, if we divide the 135 amos in half, so that we get an idea of where the Mizbeach was located, then we end up with 67 and a half amos. 67 and a half times 2 is 135. So that means that if the Mizbeach moving from Darom to Tzafon is all told 72 and a half amos, correct? Right, we had 10 and a half amos plus 62 and a half amos is 72 and a half amos. And midway between the south and the north is 67 and a half amos. So that means the Mizbeach, if you subtract you subtract 72 and a half, subtract from 72 and a half, 67 and a half. Just 1 second, 72 and a half and 67 and a half. Right? So how much is 67 minus 72 is 5 amos, correct? Let me see if I got that right. He says, Hakol b'yachad 72 amos v'chetzi, v'chatzi azor sherochav 135 amos, ole l'shishim b'sheva v'chetzi. U'me'achar sherochav ha'mizbeach hu 32 amos, nimtza shechelek hamizbeach hanimtza me'emtza zora v'tzafona hu 5 amos. Okay, we got it right. So there are 5 amos which are on the northern side, right, jutting on the, in other words, Keneged Pesach HaHechel. And then there are 27 amos of the Mizbeach that are on from the middle towards the south side. Now, if the Pesach HaOel is smack in the middle of the Azara and it's 10 amos wide, so 5 amos of those 10 amos on the north side are blocked by the Mizbeach. The 5 amos addition, in order to make up this area, which is 1/2 of 135, which is 67.5, are on the southern side. So you have 5 on the northern side of the Azor and 5 on the southern side. So now you have 5 amos of the Mizbeach on the northern side, and they will end up at the point of the Heichal where you have blocked only 5 amos of the 10 amos of the width of the Heichal. Hamizbeach begago hoyitzar b'shtei amos me'asher b'yisodo. Right, this is another point. The fundamental foundation, I should say, the foundation of the Mizbeach on the ground was the widest area, and on top of the foundation, which is called the Yisod, there was a Sovev where the Kohen used to walk around, and the Sovev was 1 amma smaller, if you follow me, the square. It's 1 square on top of the other, then the Yisod. And he says, Nimtza shemea sovev ulamala chelek hamizbeach hanimtza b'tzafon hazora heino sholosh amos bilvat v'notru miktzei hamizbeach v'hakatzei hatzafoni shel pesach ha'ol shtei amos shel chalal pesach megulos. So the way we calculate it is that if the height of the Mizbeach is, let's say, it's actually 9 amos, and from the Sovev, just 1 second, from the Sovev to the top is the part of the Mizbeach that's on the north of the Azora, is going to be 3 amos, and that's it. What you're left with from the end of the Mizbeach until the end of the Pesach HaHeichal, which goes again from south to north. So on the northern side, you're still left with 2 amos of an opening, so the Kohen standing on the Har Zeisim can see through the Shara Mizrach of the Har Bayis, and through these 2 amos, because again, once you situate the Mizbeach on the south side, then with all our calculations, we could review them again if you like, we end up with a full 3 amos worth of a direct vision of the Heichal, even after you pass the most northern corner of the Mizbeach. You're still left with 3 amos that you could see the Pesach HaHeichal. So therefore, if the Mizbeach, according to Mishnah Midos, does not block your view of the Pesach HaOel because you have this extra 3 amos on the northern side of the Pesach HaHeichal where there's no blockage from the Mizbeach, then it's impossible to say that the Mishnah in Midos can be attributed to Rabbi Yehuda. Because although Rabbi Yehuda himself holds that the Mizbeach is smack in the middle, and therefore there's no doubt that the Mizbeach would block your vision of the Pesach HaHeichal, but that's not so according to the Mishnah Midos, because the way the Mishnah Midos has the Mizbeach situated, it is towards the southern side, such that on the northern side, you're still left, even after you get to the end of the Mizbeach, with a full 3 amos worth that is open area, open space to see the Pesach HaOhel. I keep saying Pesach HaOhel, I mean Pesach HaHeichal. All right. So now we're up to Daf Yud Zayin Amud Aleph. Elalav. Now, if you have nixed the possibility of attributing Masechet Midos to Rabbi Yehuda, then Shmamino, we have to go back to original premise that the Mishnah in Midos is to be attributed to Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, who holds that although the Mizbeach does not block the vision of the Pesach HaHeichal, but because of the height of the Heichal on top of the Harabayis, and Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov, as you recall, added an extra step so that the height of the Heichal is more than 20 amos, and therefore it's impossible to see the Pesach HaHeichal unless we lower the Kosel HaMizrachi of the Harabayis so the Kohen could see on top of the Kosel HaMizrachi, climbing up, as it were, the Pesach HaHeichal Shmamina, and therefore we assume by process of elimination, we have no other potential candidate to whom we can attribute the authorship of the Mishnah Midos other than Rabbi Eliezer ben Yaakov. Now, back on Daf Tes Vav Amid Beis, we had another issue that came up, and that was the issue of the Lishkas HaTloim. Right? There was a special chamber where they kept the lambs that we used for Karbanos on the Mizbeach, and in that chamber they would examine the lambs and make sure that there was no blemish and so forth and so forth. And this Lishka was located in what's called the Beis HaMoked. The Beis HaMoked, where they kept the logs, for the fuel for the fire, was a very large area. And I think I have a diagram here somewhere. And there were 4 different chambers in each one of the 4 corners of the Lishkas HaMoked, or what's called the Beis Moked HaGadol. Now, in this very simple, it's a primitive kind of very simple diagram, he has 4 lishkos, or lishakos to be technical about it, that are located in the 4 corners of the Beis Moked. And according to the Mishnah, we have one Mishnah that seems to contradict another Mishnah as to where exactly the Lishkas HaTloim was located. What is this contradiction? It's between Masechet Tamid and Masechet Midos. According to Masechet Tamid, the Lishkas HaTloim located in the Beis Moked HaGadol was on the Zavis Tzfonis Maravis. And that's the northwestern corner, right? So if you have a little square, you'll point, if you're facing the square, you'll point to your top right, because the top line is Ma'arav, the bottom is Mizrach. You've got Safon on your right, and Durham on your left. And we're talking about the corner of Tzafon Myrov, where Tzafon meets Myrov. You got it, the top right corner. That's the Mishnah in Talmud. The Mishnah Midos says that the Lishkas Hatloim was located at the corner which is Dromis Marovis. So that it's not your top right corner, but rather your top left corner. So if you were going clockwise, you would turn the corner on the top right, which is called the northwestern corner, going down towards the northeastern corner, then turn left on the east bank and go to the what's called the Beis HaMoked, where they kept the logs. And that's located on your left bottom corner, which is called Mizrachis Dromis. Then you turn in your clockwise way up the south until you get to a lishka, which is on the top left. Now that lishka on the top left, which is called the southwestern corner, according to the Mishnah Talmud that we started with, that's called the Lishkas HaChosamos. And that was for different documents that they had to, in any event, but according to the Mishnah Midos, that top left, which is called Marovis Dromis, was actually the location of the Lishkas HaTloim. So we have a contradiction between the two. And until this point, the Gemara said that each Mishnah was written by a different Tana. And actually, there's a machlokas where the Lishkas HaTloim was located. Was it on top right, which means the northwestern corner, or was it on top left, which means the southwestern corner? Now the Gemara offers another alternative reconciliation of the two Mishnayos. Rav Idi, Rav Ado, Bered, Rav Yitzchak Omar, Hi Lishka, we made a mistake. We thought that the Lishkas HaTloim is located in a corner, a 90-degree angle in one of the corners. And we came up with two different answers to which corner it was. No. Aktsuye Maktsio. This Lishka was not at a corner of the Beis Moked, but rather Arucha Hoisav Homeres Liorach Hatzela Maravi Shel Beis Moked, Umisareches Litzad Sofon Vidoron. So it was a long lishka, meaning it was wide, it was narrow and wide, along the western side, the western flank of the Beis Moked Agadol, and it stretched both towards the east and towards the west. No, I'm sorry. Scratch that. I'm sorry. And it stretched, it was on the western side, and it stretched towards the north and towards the south, meaning the right and the left. So where was it located? He says it depends. The Asi Mitzafon, if you enter into the Beis Moked from the northern side, then Mischazule Badoro. Then as you travel, going from right to left, you see the Lishkas HaTloim towards your left, which means you're going from north to south. You entered in from the north. You're going to get a view towards the south. So it looks like the Lishkas HaTloim is inclined towards the south. But the Asi Midorom, if you enter into the Beis Moked Agadol from the left side, meaning from the south side, then Mischazile Batzofon, you'll get an impression as if the Lishka is located on the northern side. So that it's all a matter of where you're coming from and what your perspective is. He's got a picture here with two men on the two sides, on the Tzafon side and the Daram side, and there are dotted lines because each one gets a different perspective of the Lishkas HaTlaim, which goes across the western border. And the Gemara now wants to establish a support for this interpretation. Umistabra Dibamaravis Dromis Havi, that in truth the Lishka was more towards the left side, meaning towards the south side, more than the north side. And even the Tana in Masechet Tamid, who has him on the north side, would agree. Why does it say that the Lishka is on the northwestern side when it's really tilted towards the south? Mishum shemana eseder alishkos li'odem sheba min adaram umahalech sviv. He says because the way that a person would go around this lishka, this base moked, would be clockwise, turning, as it were, from the south towards the north. And now we're going to prove that. But let's just, as a memory device, just so that we keep this in mind, that you are turning from south to north on the western flank, keep in mind that kol pnio shatapona el yamin, that in the Beis Hamikdash the rule is you always turn from left to right. As we said before, since the Lishkas HaTloim is on the western flank, and it's a very long, narrow Lishka, therefore, when you're coming from the south side, which is on the left, turning towards your right, because kol pnio shatapona el yamin, you're going to get a perspective of the Lishkas HaTloim on the northern side. That's why the Mishnah Tamid identifies the location of the Lishkas HaTlaim on the northwestern side, because normally that's the direction you go. We call it clockwise, but it really means towards the right, which means from south to north. And now the Gemara is going to prove this from a fourth chamber. You remember we said there were four chambers that were located around the outer boundaries of the base moked Hagadol, and one of the four was the lechem aponim. Now watch this: the lishkas lechem aponim, which is where they bake the breads, the showbreads, was located not on the north. I'm sorry, scratch that again. Not on the west, the western flank, but rather on the southern flank. But the Gemara is going to posit two possibilities with a contradiction in two Mishnayos from Talmud to Midos, where on the eastern side, I got it right this time, where on the eastern side was it? Was it towards the north, or was it towards the south? And midoraminon lechem haponim alechem haponim, we have a stira, a contradiction between the Mishnah in Talmud and the Mishnah in Midos as to where to locate the lishkas lechem haponim. This is besides the contradiction that we had with regard to the lishkas hatlaim. The Mishnah in Talmud locates the lishkos that were in the Beis Moked Hagadol, starting with the lishkas hatloim, which, according to the Mishnah Talmud, was on the northwest, not the southwest, and you go around and you end up on the northwestern side. So what you do is you're circling the entire Lishkas Beis HaMoked, the Beis HaMoked Hagadol. You're going to start with the northwestern side and go around the four corners, and then you end up at the Lishka of the Lechem Haponim. So again, if you're going towards the right, then you're coming now from the northern side of the Lishka, right? So you're going from the northern side of the Lishka. Just 1 second. And 1 second. So you're on the north. And now, 1 second, why are you turning west over here? You're going, if you're going towards your right and you're on the north, just 1 second. Myrov Lidorom. Myrov Lidorom. Midorom Lemizrach. So Holech Lekivun Yamin. Oh, I guess he's facing. Okay, I have to consider that he's facing the square from the outside. So if you're standing on the outside of the square, facing the square on the northern side, then I'm sorry, I keep making that same mistake. Facing the square on the western side, then you're turning to your right, and therefore you're going south. Let me see if that fits into the words. Just 1 second. Kiseder ha'adam ha'holech lekivun yamin ba'ba litzafon. Excuse me, sorry. Ha'ba litzafon pone liyamin. And now he's on the northern side, turned to his right, and he's going towards the Myrov. Okay, so again, you're on the northern side facing the square. If you turn right, you're looking at the western side. Now, once you turn from the western side, and you're going counterclockwise in this case, then you're going towards the west on the south side because you came up from the north side. So now you're on the south side. Now, once you're on the Mimarav Lidorom, then you can go Midorom Lemizrach. V'nimtza she'lishkas hatloim b'tzvonis marovis, lishkas hachosmos b'marovis dromis, lishkas beis moked b'dromis mizrachis, v'lishkas lechem aponim b'mizrachis tzvonis. So according to the Mishnah in Talmud, the way we worked it out, it means that you're going this way around, right, counterclockwise, and you're going to hit the Lishkas. Second, why does he tell you? I see. Yeah, that's how he calculates the diagram. He tells you diagram number Gimel. Okay, so this is diagram number Gimel. And where is he going to place? He's placing the Lishkas Lechem Aponim, Mizrachis Tzfonis. Just 1 second. See how I get that? Lechem Aponim is Mizrachis Tzfonis. One second, he's going here, there. He's coming around. He has it here. Mizrachis Tzfonis is on the right, on the bottom right. On the bottom right. So again, I don't want to hold you up going through each step of the 4 steps. Let's just end up in the Mishnah in Talmud on the Mizrachis Tzfonis, which is your bottom right. Ve'ilu b'Mishnah b'Midos mefurash. It says explicitly, shel lishkas lechem aponim omedes b'keren dromis mizrachis. That means not on your bottom right, but on your bottom left. V'nimtzu shtei ha-mishnayos sosra zu etzu. So we have a contradiction in the two mishnayos once again. Tamid versus Midos. Umishaninon. And to reconcile this contradiction, Omer Rav Huna Bered Rav Yeshua, Mar Kachoshiv Derech Yamin, Umar Kachoshiv Derech Small. That in truth, the Lechem Apanim was stretched along the eastern side of the base Moked HaGadol, and depending upon whether you came in from the left looking towards the right or the right looking to the left, that's how you'd identify. And since you use that resolution to resolve the contradiction regarding the Lichkas Lechem Apanim, we're going to use the same logic of Rav Huna Bered Rav Yeshua. Make sure I got the name right. Yeah, Rav Huna Bered Rav Yeshua used that same logic to reconcile the contradiction regarding the Lichkas Hatloim. If you're going to tell me that the Tana of the Mishnah Masechet Tamid holds that the Lichkas Hatloim was B'maravis Dromis Havi, but it is inclined towards the south, right? Even though you identified on the north side, but it's closer to the south side. And what he says here by locating it, and that's the Mishnah Tamid, on the north side is only because of the perspective of the person who comes into the base Moked from the south side, and it looks to him from his standpoint as if the Lishka is stretched out towards the north side. Hainu Dimitaretz. Now we appreciate the resolution of Rav Huna Bered Rav Yeshua as far as the Lechem Aponim, such that the Mishnah Masechet Tamid, when it sets up the locations of the various lishkos, we're talking about a person who is walking from right to left, and the Tana in Masechet Tamid calculates or locates the Lishkas Hatloim as being beyond, or I should say before, the Lishkas Achosmos, and then afterwards the Lishkas Beis HaMoked, and he ends up in the Lishkas Lechem Aponim, and the Lishkas Hatloim is now located on the southwestern side. But if you were to calculate from someone who is looking towards the opposite direction, then you would locate the Lishkas HaChosmos on the northwestern side, and after the Lishkas Beis HaMoked on the northeastern side, and finally the Lishkas Lechem Aponim on the southeastern side. So Nimtza she'af hatana b'tamid, even the Tana of Masechet Tamid Modeh, he concedes to the Tana in Midos that the Lishkas Lechem Aponim was on the southeastern side, and there's no stira. If you're going to say that the Lishkas Hatloim was Tzmonis Maravis, and you're going to take the Mishnah in Tamid at face value literally, and you're going to locate the Lishkas Hatloim on the northwestern side, V'haisa Noteh El Atzafon, right? So you're placing it on the northern side, then even if you're going to tell me that the Tana in Tamid is going from right to left, sof my tirutza, the Lechem Aponim, you will have no way of reconciling the stira, the so-called contradiction with regard to Lechem Aponim, because the Tana in Tamid starts with the Lishkas Hatloim on the northwestern side, and then it goes to the Lishkas HaChosmos on the northeastern side, and afterwards the Lishkas Beis HaMoked on the southeastern side, and the Lishkas Lechem Aponim on the southwestern side, whereas the Mishnah Midos explicitly locates the Lechem Aponim on the southeastern side. So where is the Lechem Aponim, the Lishka side? Is it on the southwestern corner, or is it on the southeastern corner? We still are left with a stira, Lav Shmamina. We're going to have to come to the conclusion with regard to Lishkas HaTlaim that b'maravis dromis havi, it was actually located on the southwestern side, not the northwestern side. He calls it the northwestern side only because he was coming in that direction, and that was the perspective he has, Shmamina. And the Gemara has a kasha now on Rav Huna, Breder of Yeshua, V'amar Mar, Kol Pnio Shatapona Lo Yeh El Derech Yamin. You should always turn towards the right side. La Mizrach. So he'd have to turn towards the Mizrach. And now we're saying he's turning towards the western side, which is towards his left. So the Gemara answers, Hanimili Ba'avoda, V'hocha Chush B'noi B'almahu. We're not talking about the Avoda. When the Kohen is doing the Avoda, he always turns towards the right. But when we're calculating where each Lishka is located, it doesn't make any difference whether you go towards the right or towards the left. Okay, Rabbosai, this has been a rough sugya, but now we get back on track. All of the Gemara that we learned for the last 3 meetings was, in a sense, a digression from Masechet Yoma. But now we get back to Masechet Yoma. And the Mishnah on Daf Yud Daled tells us that the Kohen Gadol, during the entire year, has first dibs, who makriv chelek barash v'notel chelek barash. So as far as the avodah akrov is concerned, he can decide which carbon he wants to be makriv. And as far as the chelek, meaning to eat the basar, he can decide that he wants the basar. Toner Rabbanan Ketzad. What does this mean? Kohen Gadol's makriv chelik barash, the first part. Omer, he declares ola zu ani makriv, mincha zu ani makriv. He can decide which carbon he wants to be makriv, and what that does is, it, in a sense, it undermines the anshe mishmar. Now, let's just go quickly over the law of the mishmaros, right? The Kohanim were divided into 24 groups, 24 mishmaros, and every mishmar got 1 week every 6 months. And another Kohen from a different mishmar has no rights to intercede and take over the avodah of that Kohen who's on duty during that week, with the exception of the Kohen Gadol. He's not part of the pious. He doesn't have to be part of the lottery to decide who does the Avodas HaMikdash, like all the other Kohanim are. If the Kohen Gadol wants to do a certain mitzvah, a certain akrava, of an olah, of a mincha, whatever it might be, he has the right to bump off one of the Anshe Mishmar. Now the Brisa continues. The Ketzad Notel Chelik Barash. What does it mean he gets the choice portion? Omer, he can declare Chata zu ani ochel, Osham zeh ani ochel. He can choose to eat whatever he wants from the karbanos, even though he wasn't makriv the karban. Normally, the Kohen, who's part of that krav of the karban, is rewarded with rights to eat the basar. But the Kohen Gadol can bump him off from those rights and decide, I want to eat the basar of the Osham, I want to eat the basar of the Chatos. Bin notel chalo. Oh, this is going to be the sugya that we're going to learn now. Now, on Shavuos, there were 2 chalos. It's called the Shtei Alechem. And the Kohen Gadol is allowed to say, I want one of the 2 chalos. It would be disrespectful for him to take 2 chalos, but he can take one of 2 chalos. All right. Now, on a weekly basis, we have the Lechem Haponim, which is made up of 12 chalas. And the Brisa says that the Kohen Gadol could take arba o chamesh mimaisa lechem haponim. He's allowed to take 4 or 5 of the chalos. And the Gemara later on is going to try to figure this out. Is it 4 or is it 5? Rebbe Omer Liolam Chamesh. Rebbe says that he will always get 5 and no more than 5 of the chalos of the lechem upon it. Shenemar, the pasuk says in Vayikra Chav Daled regarding the division of the lechem upon it, v'hoisa li Aaron ulebanav. And the Torah is equating Aaron, the Kohen Gadol, with Banav, with the regular rank and file Kohanim. Mechza li Aaron and Mechza li Banav. We split it evenly. So Rebbe is assuming when he tells you that the Kohen Gadol gets 5 chalas, how many chalas are they divided up? If the Kohen Gadol gets 50%, 10. What happened to the other 2? We know that there were 12 chalas, 6 on each side. So the Gemara is going to take this up, and those 2 chalas were designated for somebody else. So Rebbe is of the opinion that the Kohen Gadol gets half. And if there are 10 chalas to be divided up, he'll get 5 if he so desires. And in the case of Shtei Lechem on Shavuos, he gets half, and therefore he gets 1 of the 2 chalas. So the Gemara says that it would seem from Rebbe that the Chacham, the Tanakama, disagrees with Rebbe and holds that the Kohen Gadol does not have rights to take half. He's got to get less than half. And that's why he'll get 4 chalas. So the Gemara asks, Hagufa Kasha. Amr, at the beginning of this price, it says, no tel chalachas mishtei chalos. That on Chag HaShavuos, which they Alechem gets, Kohen Gadol, if he so desires, gets 1 chala, which means he gets 50%. Mani, who is the author of that opinion? Rebbe, Diomar Palgas Shakil. Rebbe derives from the pasuk v'hoisa li'aron ulebanov that he gets 50%. But Ema mitziasa. Let's look at the next section of this brisa, and it says with regard to the lechem aponim, arba o chamesh mimaisa lechem aponim, which means the Gemara thinks now that there are 12 chalas to be divided up, and the Kohen Gadol is allowed to take maximum 4 or 5. Is asan l'Rabbana di'ami lo shakil palga. This is the Tanakama's opinion against Rebbe that the Kohen Gadol could only get less than half. Amos Seifa. Now, the end of the Bryce, it says Rebbe Omer Liolam Chamesh. So it turns out that Reisha, in the case of Shtei Alechem, where the Kohen Gadol takes 50%, meaning 1 chal, and the Seifa, which says Liolam Chamesh, that's Rebbe. But Mitziasa, which says 4 chalas, in the case of Lechem Aponu, is the Rabbanan, because 4 is less than half. How could that be? A brisa that begins and ends with the Shita of Rebbe, and in the middle, anonymously, quotes the Shita, the debate, the dissenting view of the Chachamim. Omar Abaye, Reisha u'mitziasa Rabbana, meaning that even though the Rabbanan say that the Kohen Gadol gets less than 50%, but nevertheless, in the case of Shtei Alechem, on Chag HaShavuos, he's going to get a full challah. Modu Rabbanan, the prusa, the lav urchiara, lemesav, the Kohen Gadol. If you want to divvy up 2 challahs in such a way that the Kohen Gadol gets less than half, you're going to have to cut 1 of the 2 challahs. And it's not derech eretz to give the Kohen Gadol a sliced piece of challah. Therefore, in the case of Shtei Alechem of Chag HaShavuos, if we're going to give him less than half, he's going to end up with a prusa. That we can't do. That's an insult to the Kohen Gadol. And therefore, we're going to give him a lechem sholem, which, as it turns out, is 50%. But as a general rule, we will give the Kohen Gadol less than 50%. And now we turn to Daf Yud Ches Amud Aleph. Now, Abaye says that the Brisa, which tells you that the Kohen Gadol gets 4 or 5 chalas in the case of Lechem Aponim, reflects the Shita Chacham, the Kohen Gadol gets less than half. So the Gemara says, well, when is it 4 and when is it 5? Umay arba o chamesh. Well, when is it 4 and when is it 5? Now, to answer this question, the Gemara reflects on a Mishnah in Masechet Sukkah that records a machlokes between the Chachamim and Rabbi Yehuda about exactly how we divvy up the Lechem Aponim on a weekly basis every Shabbos. There are 12 chalas of Lechem Aponim. There are 2 mishmaros. There's the outgoing mishmar that had set up the Lechem Aponim last Shabbos. There are these incoming mishmeres that is now placing the new set of lechamim, and now we have 12 lechamim that are being removed from the shulchan, divvying up amongst the kohanim. Which mishmeres deserves those lechamim? Is it the mishmeres that put down the lechamim, or is it the mishmeres that takes away the lechamim to replace them with this week's new lechamim? And the answer is we're going to split it up 50-50 between the mishmeres hayotzes and the mishmeres hanichneses. The Amri, l'Rabbanan the Amri, this the Rabbanan Masechet Sukkah. Hanichnas notel sheish, ve'hayotze notel sheish. Right, the new mishmeres that's called the nichnas, they get 6 chalas, and the outgoing mishmeres takes 6. Now, Rabbi Yehuda disagrees because he thinks that we can only divide up 10 out of the 12 chalas between the mishmeres hayotzes and the mishmeres hanichneses. There are 2 chalas out of the 12 that have to be designated for a different gift, as we'll explain in a minute. The Rabbanon in Masechet Sukkah says no. They say, let's divide up all 12, 6 and 6. We're not going to designate another, take away 2 chalas. Why? Tischar hagofas dlosos lo mishtemes reboy mifla. So there's something called hagofas dlosos. Okay. Now, what is hagofas dlosos? At the end of Shabbos, on Motzei Shabbos, when the new mishmeres comes in, and they now have replaced the Lechem Aponim with a brand new, fresh group of 12, they would now lock the door. That's called hagofas dlosos. So the new group will have those who will actually place the Lechem Aponim on the shulchan, and there will be, let's say, I don't know, 1, 2, let's say 2 kohanim who will be in charge of locking the doors. Keep in mind that the shulchan is located in the heichal, and there's a mitzvah of hagofas dlosos shel heichal. We want to pay up our dues, our salary, so to speak, to 3 different groups. According to Rabbi Yehuda, Tanakama has only 2 groups. Number 1, we have the Mishmar Hayotzes. They were the one who initially placed the 12 Lechamim. We have the Lishka, the Mishmeres Hayotze HaNichneses, which is the new group, right? It's like Buckingham Palace, you know what I mean? The new group that's coming in to replace the old 12 chalas. Chachamim say, stop. That's all I have to know. 6 to the old group, the Yotzes, and 6 to the new group, the Nichneses. That's it. 6 and 6. Rabbi Yehuda says no. We have to introduce another element in the equation, another group of people that deserve a chelik in the lechem aponim. They should be duly rewarded or paid or respected for their contribution. They are the ones who are in charge of hagofas hadlosos. And we're going to give them 2 chalas. We're left now with 10 chalas, which we're going to divide equally amongst the 2 mishmarot, right? And each mishmeres is going to get 5 chalas. So again, according to Chachamim, each mishmeres gets 6 chalas, and we're not paying our dues to the agofa. And according to Rabbi Yehuda, paying our dues to the agofa of 2 chalas. Now we're left with 10, and each one of the groups now, the mishmaros, are going to get 5 chalas. Is Batzir, okay, now the Kohen Gadol, according to the sheet of the Chachamim, we said, has to get less than half. Is Betzir Chada Mipalga? He says, if we're going to give him 1 less than half, according to the Rabbanon, I'm talking about him, meaning the Kohen Gadol. So that would mean that according to the Rabbanon in Sukkah, that we are dividing up all 12 chalas equally between the 2 mishmarot. So we have 12 chalas to divide up 6 and 6. The Kohen Gadol has to take less than half. He gets 5. But Rabbi Yehuda, the Yoma nichnas notel sheva chatos, ushtayim schar hagofas dlosos. So we're going to divide it up 5 and 7. 5 for the mishmeres hayotzes, 7 for the mishmeres hanichneses, 2 of which are members of this group that are in charge of hagofas dlosos. So that the Mishmeres HaNichneses is now going to get 5, and the Mishmeres HaYotzes gets 5. The Kohen Gadol could only take 4 because he can only get less than half. And if he takes 5, he gets half. So we'll give him 4. Shtayim b'schar hagofas losos, v'yotzes notel chamesh. Is therefore, we have only 10 chalas to divide between the Mishmeres HaYotzes Meshach Nichneses, only 10, because 2 we designate for the Agofas Hadlosos. Is Me'eser Boy Lemifla. We have to divide up 2 halves of 10, but now for the Kohen Gadol Batzir Chado Mipalga, the Rabbanan hold that we have to reduce the Kohen Gadol to less than half, is therefore Shakil Arba. Why? Because you have 5 and 5. If you want to get less than, if the Kohen Gadol gets less than half, he gets 4. So it means 4 according to Rabbi Yehuda in Masechet Sukkah, who's got a division of 10 chalas amongst the 2 mishmaros, and 5 according to the sheet of the Rabbanon in Sukkah, where we divide up all 12 chalas between the 2 mishmaros, 6 and 6. The Kohen Gadol now gets downgraded to 5. And all this is according to the Chachamim, because they never accepted the drush of Rebbe. Rebbe holds that the Kohen Gadol gets half, and Rebbe will tell you that the Kohen Gadol will always get 5 chalas, because Rebbe holds like Rabbi Yehuda, that 2 chalas are designated for the Kohanim who are in charge of Hagofas Hadlosos. We're left with 10 chalas to divide up 50, 55, 5, and the Kohen Gadol will get 5. Whereas according to Chachamim, it depends. If you hold like Rabbi Yehuda, the Kohen Gadol is going to get 4. If you hold like the Rabbanan in Sukkah, the Kohen Gadol will get 5. Whereas Rebbe holds he always gets 5. Because he always gets 50%. And again, we have to add that Rebbe holds like Rabbi Yehuda that 2 chalas have to be subtracted from the 12 because we're designating them for the agafa asad losses. Now I know it's late, so I just want to end with one. We'll make a sign where we get up to, but with one point over here. Why do the Chachamim insist that the Kohen Gadol gets less than half? So Tosfos, at the bottom of the Amud here on Yud Zayin Amud Beis, says that Taimon shal Chachamim shenotel pachos mimechza mishum she'ein ze midas derech eretz sheyitol mana shava lechelik klal hakonim ulachshivo kishakol keneged kulam. It's halach in derech eretz. If the Kohen Gadol takes 50%, that means all the efforts of the Kohanim who put into this entire process and the entire akrava, and he's equal to them. I'm shakol keneged kulam. You could have a whole list of Kohanim that got involved in this avoda, and I'm just as good as all of them together. I want 50%. That's not derech eretz. So we always want to give a certain midah of derech eretz here for to respect and recognize, acknowledge the Kohanim. We let the Kohen Gadol get less than half. In the case of Shtei Alechem, he'll get a full half, but that's the exception to the rule rather than the rule, and that's because it's not kovedik to give the Kohen Gadol a sliced challah. Give him a whole challah. And that midah of kavod for the Kohen Gadol that he shouldn't get a sliced challah trumps the bad midah of am shakol keneged kulam. But in the case of lechem apanim, the maximum amount he can get is 5, and that's in a case where, according to Rabbanan in Sukkah, we're giving up all 12 chalas, and the Kohen Gadol should not take 6 and make an announcement, am shakol keneged kulam. He gets downgraded to 5. Rebbe holds he gets 5 because Rebbe accepts Rabbi Yehuda that there are only 10 chalas being divided. According to Chachamim, if we're dividing 12, so then the Kohen Gadol will get 5 chalas. If we hold like Rabbi Yehuda, we're only dividing 10, the Kohen Gadol will get 4 chalas. Okay, then? So I'm happy to say that we did whatever we could with the location of the various lishkos, and now we're back to Masechet Yoma. I would assume that next Wednesday should be okay. The following Wednesday, you'll have to give me your feedback. It's getting very, very close to the day, so we may have to take a break. Okay, then? So let me know. And I wish you all a great Shabbos. Parshas Vayakal Pkudei with also the Kriya V'Chodesh Zelochem Rosh Chodesh. And if you get a chance to hear my little, I don't know if you're on the list, to hear my little video, which I publish every week. I know this week I put in a lot of extra effort to it, so you'll let me know if you like it. All right, Kol Tov.